Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we're going to take you on a little journey through Indian real estate,
Oh, yeah.
but with a bit of a twist.
Okay.
We're looking at what happens when things go wrong,
I see.
when projects stall,
Right.
and that big I word
Oh,
enters
yeah.
the picture, insolvency.
It's a scenario that unfortunately plays out, more often than we'd like. And
Yeah.
it has a huge impact on everyone involved,
Yeah, for sure.
from developers to investors and especially home buyers.
Absolutely.
What's interesting is how India is trying to navigate these complexities with its Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code,
Right.
a relatively new law that aims to make the resolution process smoother and fairer.
And that's exactly where our deep dive begins today.
Right.
We've got this fascinating discussion paper from the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Board of India,
The IBBI.
the IBBI,
Right.
which lays out a series of proposed changes to the existing rules.
The IBBI is essentially the referee in the insolvency arena setting the rules of the game. This paper, which is informed by a ton of experts in the field,
Yeah.
really gets into the nitty-gritty of how to handle real estate projects when a company hits a financial snag.
And for anyone who's ever invested in real estate or even just dreamt of owning their own home, this stuff is essential knowledge.
Absolutely.
It's about understanding your rights, navigating a complex system, and hopefully coming out the other side with your investment intact.
One of the key areas the IBBI is tackling is the role of land authorities in insolvency proceedings.
Okay.
And this is a big deal because, as it stands, they're often left out of the loop when crucial decisions are being made.
So let's paint a picture for our listeners.
Sure.
Imagine a real estate company goes belly up, can't pay its debts,
Right.
and enters into insolvency proceedings.
Happens all the time.
There's this group called the Committee of Creditors, the COC, that steps in.
Think of the COC as a board of directors, but for a distressed company. They're the ones with the power to decide the fate of the project, to approve or reject a plan for how the company can get back on track, or whether it's time to liquidate the assets.
And who are these COC members?
Yeah,
I'm guessing it's not the home buyers eagerly waiting to move into their new apartments?
you're right.
Okay.
It's primarily the financial creditors,
Okay.
the big players like banks and other lenders who essentially hold the purse strings.
Right.
Now, here's where things get tricky.
Okay.
The land authorities, who have massive influence over real estate projects,
Yeah.
approving land allotments, building permits, you name it,
Huh.
they're not automatically part of this COC.
So they're sidelined even though they hold a lot of the regulatory cards.
They are?
Doesn't that seem like a recipe for disaster?
It absolutely can be.
Yeah.
Imagine a resolution plan gets the green light,
Okay.
everyone's celebrating, but then bam, the land authority swoops in and says, hold on, there's a zoning issue. This whole project violates local regulations.
Oh, no.
The whole thing could come crashing down.
That's a nightmare scenario, especially for home buyers who've poured their savings into these projects.
Absolutely.
So what's the IBBI's solution to this land authority conundrum?
They've proposed a clever fix.
Oh,
Give the land authorities a seat at the table, but not voting rights.
I see.
In other words, they become invited guests to the COC meetings,
Okay.
allowing them to voice concerns, flag potential issues, and ensure everything aligns with the regulatory framework.
So it's like having a regulatory watchdog in the room,
Exactly.
making sure everyone stays on the straight and narrow.
Right.
Okay.
And for home buyers, this is a huge win for transparency.
Yeah.
Knowing that someone's looking out for potential land-related snags can provide a lot of peace of mind.
Okay, so that's one problem tackled.
Right.
But what about those situations where the land authority throws a wrench into the works even before the insolvency process begins?
Yeah.
The paper mentions this as a real sticking point.
You're talking about land reclamation, which can happen if a developer defaults on payments or violates the terms of their land allotment agreement.
Right.
The land authority essentially says, you broke the rules, we're taking back our land.
Which sounds reasonable on the surface.
Yeah.
But what if the company is already in dire straits, on the verge of insolvency? Doesn't that just add fuel to the fire?
It absolutely complicates things, especially if the land is the primary asset of the real estate company.
Yeah.
It creates a massive headache for the COC because they might be trying to rescue a project that's suddenly landless.
So what's the IBBI's game plan for this land-grabbing dilemma?
They're proposing that the insolvency professional, the IP,
Oh.
who is essentially the captain of the insolvency ship,
Right.
has to immediately inform the COC and the adjudicating authority if the land gets snatched back.
Transparency strikes again.
Right.
So no more hiding the land-lost elephant in the room.
Exactly.
Okay.
With all the cards on the table, the COSI can make an informed decision. Do they try to salvage the project, maybe negotiate with the land authority, or is it time to cut their losses and liquidate the company's remaining assets?
All this talk about creditors and cognizance is making me think, where did the home buyers fit into this whole equation?
Yeah.
They're often the ones with the most to lose, right?
You're absolutely right. And that brings us to another crucial aspect the IBBI is addressing,
Okay.
empowering homebuyer associations in insolvency proceedings.
This is where things get really interesting, because under the existing rules,
Yeah.
home buyers are actually considered financial creditors.
They are.
They've got skin in the game, they've put their hard-earned money into these projects, and the law recognizes that.
It's a shift from the old days where homebuyers often felt powerless,
Yeah.
left at the mercy of developers and legal battles that dragged on for years.
Right?
The Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code actually gives them a seat at the table, a voice in the process.
And not just a voice, right?
Yeah.
They can actually band together,
Right.
form homebuyer associations, and become resolution applicants.
Exactly. It's like a David versus Goliath scenario where a group of homebuyers can step up and say, we're taking control of this project.
Oh.
We're going to make sure it gets completed and we get the homes we were promised.
Talk about empowerment. But I'm guessing it's not as simple as just forming a group and taking over, right? There must be some hurdles along the way.
There are, and this is where the IBBI's proposed changes come in.
Yeah.
Right now, the rules for homebuyer associations to qualify as resolution applicants can be quite strict.
Oh, so there's a catch.
They might have to meet certain financial criteria,
Right.
prove they represent a majority of homebuyers,
Okay.
and jump through various legal hoops.
So well-intentioned groups might get excluded because of some technicality.
Precisely.
Yeah.
And that's why the IBBI is suggesting that the CONA be given more flexibility to relax some of these conditions,
Okay.
to make it easier for genuine homebuyer associations to participate in the resolution process.
It's like giving them a fighting chance,
Mm.
recognizing that they're not just passive investors,
Yeah.
but active stakeholders who are deeply invested both financially and emotionally in these projects.
Absolutely. And it aligns with the overall goal of the Insolvency Code, which is to find solutions that maximize the value of the assets
Right.
and benefit all stakeholders, including homebuyers.
This all sounds promising, but I
Yeah.
have to ask, what about the financial hit that home buyers take when a project goes under?
Yeah.
They're not just losing time,
Yeah.
they're losing potential earnings on their investments.
Of course.
Is there any provision for that?
That's a great question, and it leads us to another interesting proposal from the IBBI,
Okay.
the interest rate dilemma.
Ooh, the interest rate dilemma.
Currently, there's a regulation that sets the interest rate at 8% per annum for calculating voting shares within the COCOs.
So that determines how much influence each creditor has in the decision-making process.
Right, but here's the catch.
Okay, there's always a catch.
It's not entirely clear whether this 8% interest should also be included in the actual claim amount that homebuyers are entitled to receive as part of the resolution process.
Wait, so we're talking about two different things here.
Yeah.
Voting power
Yeah.
and actual money in their pocket.
Exactly, and this ambiguity has led to inconsistencies.
Wow.
With some insolvency professionals factoring in the interest when calculating payouts to homebuyers and others not.
That's got to be incredibly frustrating for home buyers. It's like playing a game where the rules keep changing.
It is, and it's also led to some homebuyers seeking redress through other legal channels,
Yeah.
like consumer courts, which just adds more complexity and delays to the whole process.
So is the IBBI stepping in to clear up this confusion?
Their proposal is crystal clear.
Okay, good.
The 8% interest should be part of the claim amount.
I like the sound of that.
This means homebuyers could potentially receive a larger payout,
Okay.
and hopefully it will reduce the need for them to navigate multiple legal avenues to get what they're rightfully owed.
It's a step towards fairness and clarity, which is always a good thing. But let's face it, insolvency cases, especially in real estate, can be incredibly complex,
Oh, absolutely.
often involving a tangled web of creditors with competing interests.
Oh, yeah.
How does the IBBI address that?
That's a crucial point, and it's something they've given a lot of thought to.
Okay.
One of the key challenges they've identified is the issue of representation, particularly in those massive real estate projects
Right.
where you have hundreds, even thousands of creditors.
Well, it's trying to herd cats, right?
It's-
Getting everyone on the same page,
Yeah.
making sure all those voices are heard.
Exactly, and the current system isn't really designed for that level of complexity.
Yeah.
Right now, each class of creditor gets one authorized representative on the COSI.
So in a project with thousands of home buyers, you might have one person representing all of them. That doesn't seem very effective.
It's not. Individual concerns can get lost in the shuffle.
Right.
And it can create a sense of disconnect between the co-C and the people they're supposed to be representing.
So how do you bridge that gap? How do you make sure everyone feels like they have a voice in the process?
The IBBI solution is an interesting one.
Okay.
Facilitators.
Facilitators.
They're proposing that large creditor groups, like homebuyers,
Okay.
be allowed to appoint facilitators who can act as a bridge between the authorized representative and the individual creditors.
So it's like having a team of advocates who can gather feedback,
Right.
communicate updates, and ensure that everyone's interests are considered in the decision-making process.
That's the idea. It's
Yeah.
about creating a more inclusive and representative system where everyone feels like their voice matters.
Mhm.
Of course, the success of this will depend on how well these facilitator roles are defined and implemented.
It's a good reminder that even the best-intentioned regulations can fall flat if they're not executed properly, but it's definitely a step in the right direction.
Absolutely.
Now, speaking of transparency and keeping everyone informed,
Yeah.
the IBBI has another proposal that caught my eye.
Okay.
Making the minutes of COTI meetings accessible to all creditors in real estate projects.
This is a big deal because those minutes are the official record of what goes on in those crucial COSI meetings.
Yeah.
They contain all the updates on the project.
Right.
The financial decisions, timelines, challenges, voting outcomes, you name it.
It's like having a backstage pass to the inner workings of the insolvency process.
Exactly. But right now, access to those minutes is limited,
Okay.
usually just shared with the authorized representatives of different creditor classes.
So individual home buyers are left in the dark, relying on their AR to keep them informed, which, let's face it, doesn't always happen.
It can create a real information gap, leaving homebuyers feeling powerless and out of the loop. And that's why the IBBI is pushing for full transparency, giving all creditors, including homebuyers, direct access to the COSI meeting minutes.
So no more whispers in the corridors of the power. Everyone gets to see how the sausage is made.
Precisely, this empowers homebuyers with information, allowing them to track progress, understand the rationale behind decisions, and hold the stakeholders accountable.
Yeah.
It's about fostering trust and creating a more level playing field.
I'm sensing a theme here: transparency, empowerment, fairness.
Yeah.
The IBBI seems to be taking a more holistic approach to insolvency in real estate, recognizing that it's not just about numbers and legal processes, but about people's lives and their dreams of owning a home.
It's a welcome shift, and I think it reflects a growing awareness that a successful insolvency system needs to strike a balance between protecting creditors and creating an environment that's conducive to growth and investment in the real estate sector.
Because let's face it, no one benefits from a system that's bogged down in delays, disputes, and a lack of clarity.
Exactly. The goal is to create a system that's efficient, fair, and ultimately helps to restore confidence in the market.
Well said. Now, we've covered a lot of ground, but there's one more piece of the puzzle we need to address the handover of possession.
Okay.
Imagine you've invested in a project.
Uh-huh.
The units are technically complete,
Right.
but the whole thing is stuck in limbo because of the ongoing insolvency proceedings.
It's a frustrating scenario and one that the IBBI is looking to streamline. Fortunately, there's already some positive legal precedent in this area,
Yeah.
with courts recognizing the need to allow ownership transfer and registration even while a project is under insolvency.
So there's a glimmer of hope for those home buyers who are just a signature away from getting the keys to their new homes.
Yes, and the IBBI wants to build on that momentum by creating a more standardized process for handing over possession.
Okay.
Their proposal is to give the resolution professional with the green light from the COSI the authority to transfer units to allottees who've already paid in full.
So no more being held hostage by the insolvency process if you've met your financial obligations.
Exactly, and to make things even smoother,
Okay.
they're proposing two options for handover.
Okay.
As is, meaning the allottee accepts the unit in its current condition,
Right.
or upon payment of any remaining balance.
So they're trying to offer flexibility and cater to different scenarios once those units are handed over. The allottees can finally complete the registration process and become rightful owners of their homes.
It's a positive step towards resolving one of the most agonizing aspects of real estate insolvency, and it has the potential to bring relief to countless homebuyers who've been stuck in limbo for far too long.
Speaking of costs and complexities,
Yeah.
let's not forget about the financial side of the insolvency process itself.
Right.
We've talked about the potential for homebuyer associations to appoint facilitators.
Yeah.
But who's going to foot the bill for these extra players?
That's a valid question, and the IBBI has addressed it in their proposal. They're suggesting that the fees for facilitators be capped at 20% of the fees specified for the authorized representative.
So a percentage-based system linked to the existing fee structure, does that mean the creditors will be shelling out more money?
Not exactly. The IBBI's proposal makes it clear that these facilitator fees would be considered part of the overall insolvency resolution process cost,
Okay.
which means it comes out of the company's assets, not from the pockets of individual creditors.
Okay, so it's like a shared expense spread across the board. But 20% of the AR's fees, is that enough to attract qualified professionals to take on these facilitator roles?
That's a good question, and it's one that deserves careful consideration. If the fees are too low, it might discourage experienced professionals from taking on these crucial roles, potentially creating a bottleneck in the process.
It's a reminder that even well-intentioned regulations can have unintended consequences.
Absolutely. It highlights the need for ongoing evaluation and adjustments to ensure that the system operates effectively and achieves its intended goals.
We've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive, but there's one final aspect we need to explore: the potential impact of these proposed changes on the broader real estate market. Yeah, it's easy to get caught up in the, individual cases.
Right.
But what happens if we zoom out a little?
Yeah,
Look at the bigger picture.
sure.
How could these proposed changes affect the entire real estate sector in India?
Well, a robust and well-functioning insolvency system isn't just about resolving individual cases. It's about creating an environment that fosters confidence
Right.
and attracts investment.
Because no one wants to put their money into a market where they feel like the rules are stacked against them,
Right.
where there's a high risk of getting caught in a legal quagmire if things go south.
Exactly. If these changes are implemented effectively
Uh-huh.
and they address the concerns we've discussed,
Right.
it could send a strong signal to investors,
Okay.
both domestic and international,
Right.
that India is serious about creating a transparent and predictable real estate market.
So it's about creating a level playing field, a sense of security that encourages more investment, which in turn fuels growth, creates jobs, and benefits the entire economy.
Precisely. And there's another potential benefit that's worth highlighting.
Okay.
If these changes lead to more efficient and timely resolution of insolvency cases,
Uh-huh.
it could also help to reduce the overall cost of doing business in the real estate sector.
Because delays in legal battles can be incredibly costly for everyone involved.
Absolutely. Streamlining the process, minimizing disputes, and creating a more predictable framework can free up resources that can be invested back into new projects and initiatives, ultimately making the sector more dynamic and competitive.
So it's a win-win situation,
Yeah.
potentially leading to a more stable, transparent, and attractive real estate market for everyone involved.
Right.
But are there any potential downsides or challenges that we should be aware of?
Of course, no major policy shift is without its risks.
Okay.
Some developers might argue that these proposed changes create an overly burdensome regulatory environment,
Right.
adding more layers of compliance and potentially stifling innovation.
So it's like walking a tightrope.
It is.
You want to protect stakeholders
Right.
and ensure fairness,
Yeah.
but you also don't want to create a system that's so restrictive
Yeah.
that it discourages investment and growth.
Exactly. Finding that balance is crucial.
Right.
That's why it's essential for the IBBI to carefully consider the feedback it receives on this discussion paper from all stakeholders, including developers.
Right. And to make adjustments as needed to ensure that the final regulations strike the right balance.
It's a reminder that policymaking is an iterative process.
Oh,
It's a constant dialogue and refinement to find solutions that work in the real world.
And it highlights the need for open and constructive communication between all the players in the real estate ecosystem.
Yeah.
Home buyers, developers, creditors, policymakers.
Mhm.
Everyone has a role to play in shaping a system that's fair, efficient, and benefits the entire sector.
Well, for our listeners who joined us on this deep dive into the world of Indian real estate and insolvency, I hope you've gained a better understanding of the complexities involved
I hope so.
and the potential impact of these proposed changes.
It's a dynamic and evolving landscape.
It is.
And it's important to stay informed,
Yes,
to understand the rules of the game, and to know your rights as a home buyer or investor.
absolutely. Knowledge is power, especially when it comes to making informed decisions about your hard-earned money. So stay curious, stay engaged, and keep asking those tough questions. And never underestimate the power of collective action.
Yeah.
As we've seen with the rise of homebuyer associations,
Right.
when people come together and advocate for their interests, they can make a real difference.
It's a reminder that even in a complex and sometimes daunting system like real estate, there's always hope. There's always a path forward, and there's always the potential for positive change.
On that note, we've reached the end of our deep dive.
Okay.
We hope you found this exploration insightful and empowering.
Until next time, happy investing, and may your real estate journey be smooth sailing.